Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the April Project Management Community Group meeting from the Educause PMCG. I am John Prette, your host for today, and we have a coffee talk topic as our main topic for the day. So it's going to be a chance to ask questions and more, and have a little bit more of a free-flowing discussion. So I am going to first figure out how to go through some housekeeping, which is, remember, and everybody's doing a wonderful job here, of keeping your computers/phones muted since we are recording the session so we can avoid background noise. Please don't place us on hold if you are using a phone. We do not like a lot of background music going on, or in cases like me, if you're not talking, having birds squawking in the background. Please do use the chat. That's one of our main ways of communicating during the session. We record and we actually share the chat after the meeting as well. And you can also raise your hand, and we'll have open mics ability today as well. So as we've already said, the session is being recorded, so thank you very much. Our agenda for today is we are going to talk about our project management template initiative. We'll give a quick update on the Agile survey that wrapped up last month, right around the time we had our March meeting, highlighting some upcoming events and our community day with the ITSM group. And then we're really going to use the majority of today's topic for a coffee talk or ask me anything type session where we can really have a free-flowing discussion and talk about what we wanted to talk about and topics of the day from the group. So it can go any way that we decide we want it to go. So with me today, I've got Carol Kiliani from the California State University Office of the Chancellor. And you remember Carol from our recent topic related to the Accidental Project Manager. And we have Ed Puckett from the University of Houston Clear Lake. And Ed is one of our webmaster key folks, and they're both steering committee members for the PMCG, which is a great way to get involved with the group. We started our steering committee last year, right around this time. And it's really added a layer of extra help to the group to keeping things organized and moving forward and helping really deliver what we believe are some really good topics for the group and putting together some strong programming and support for that programming. So thanks, Ed. Thanks, Carol, for joining today. My co-chair, Lisa, has another meeting today, so she is not with us during today's session. So she's making me fly solo. So first update is we've been doing this for the last couple months and encouraging our community group members, and we'll send a reminder after the meeting as well. But we encourage you, we are a community and we benefit from the work that we do from each other and the collaboration that we get from working together and sharing what we do, what we have. It's one of the benefits that I've seen in my 14 years in higher ed now. I could never imagine going to a competitor that we've seen through athletics or conference, rivalries, and saying, "Hey, can you share this with me?" Or having family members that work for an airline saying, "Hey, can you go to your direct competitor and ask them, what they do for their ticketing system or their core systems for what they do?" But in higher ed, that's what we do. We share, and it's one of the great things we have from the PMCG. And what we're doing is looking to build that out a little bit and add some more to it by asking you to share a template with us. And if everybody just picked what their favorite, a favorite template you might have, something that you use, maybe you used to use or you're planning on using at your school. And if you're willing to share that with us and share that with the group, that can be a benefit to your peers, and we can build a great repository from that moving forward. So we've got Ed and Chris, who's not with us today, who are doing some of the work on the back end there. We have our link to the form. I will see if we can get it put in chat. I can barely talk and look at my slides at the same time. So I don't know that I'll be able to post it in there. So if Ed or Carol, or I see Adam's on the line, if one of you guys are able to post that link, that would be great. And what I will do is take a moment actually and show you all it takes to submit a template. So let me see if I can escape out of here for a second. So you click that link and you get a form like this. And if everybody can see this, if somebody give me a hand raise if you can see this. Okay, thank you. Just making sure that my screen sharing was working still. Okay. Put in my name. So they know where we're from, and I give it a title. So I'm going to say our PM charter. We have categories which will help us on the back end review these and put them into groupings when we can post them to the website. So we just happen to have a category for charters and plans. So I grab that. In my case, I can go, if I wanted to, I could pull it right off our website. I could pull the description we use. I'll just leave it short for the purpose here. And I can add a file. I'll select it from my computer. In my case, I have a nice template folder that I keep. And I can grab where is my project charter? Here it is. So I can grab my project charter right here, choose it for upload, upload it. The last little thing we have here is so that we don't get spammed, we share our secret code, which is edu, like Educause, PMCG, exclamation. I submit, and we're done. And then what we get on the background, on the back end is we get, and we can see who all has submitted templates back here. So this is what we use, and we'll go through and we'll be able to open up those files. So we can see I've done a couple earlier today. So I can come in, and it doesn't want to let me do that. Come on.
I'll say, John, while we're talking about this, we have some folks that are having an issue getting to the template site on the Educause page. They're getting a site not found message.
To look for that's looking for with the document, with the Google Doc, or actually on our Educause PMCG site.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. I think what I'm seeing, and maybe this is where you all, if you don't mind chiming in where you're seeing it, just the project management wiki page is where I'm getting an error on now. I don't know if that's where you all are seeing that as well.
Yeah, the entire wiki. Adam, this is Ed. I think that wiki's down because I have it bookmarked, and that's where I go to make the edits that I do every month, and it's just not resolving today for some reason.
Okay.
It's very interesting.
I can leave here, and if I go to the PMCG page, so I have this. So this is our home page, and then where this will live, which is a great point, is it would live on our Google site, and it looks like our Google site is down at the moment. So going back to Nina, I see your statement with the site not found. Yes, we are seeing that. It appears to be an outage that we can let Educause know after the call. So that's doing live demos and not fully testing beforehand to see that. So that is where, to Jennifer's question, that is where we will have them posted. What we've committed to is having a small working group that's going to go and we'll be vetting the templates before getting them posted on the website and letting folks know that we would be posting it. So it is coming soon. The last piece of it that we have, as I go back into my slides, and it's going to go back to the beginning because I am not a Google person. As we go back into the slides, is that I have promised an Amazon gift card, based on a drawing once we receive 25 templates. So we are in the, I think 16, 17 out there right now. So if we get up to 25, we will do a drawing, random drawing. I am not eligible, so anything that I've submitted, I'm not going to draw my own name, but we'll do a drawing for a gift card and get an e-gift card out to the person who submits that. But we're looking for anything that can be helpful. In here, we talk about the information that we ask you for, but it could be a job description if you recently hired a project manager or a leader in your office. It can be a particular schedule template or a description. One of the things I loaded and shared was a process document. So any of those types of things that can be helpful, even if you think it's old hat to you, it's going to be new to somebody else. So we really appreciate it. Thank you, spread the word, and I will move on from there. Any other questions related to the templates? Okay. Also last month, we had a quick update. We had Agile as our topic last month, as well as we had another topic in a subgroup from the PMCG area deliver a topic related to Agile. So hot topic going on. So we had one of our members volunteered to do a survey about Agile related topics to pick out and see what the appetite demand was to be able to look into potentially some future topics related to Agile from within the group. So thank you to Patrick from the University of Wisconsin for running the survey. We had just under 50 responses to it. He asked and prepared 15 different topics, suggestions for people to vote on their favorite 3. So from those responses, we had 2 clear favorites that showed up on 2/3 of the responses. One of them was project estimating and prioritization techniques, which is interesting because that tends to be a topic that shows up whether we're running Agile, whether we're running waterfall, just in general, how we do estimates. So estimating within an Agile world is an additional nuance into that. And as well as the project intake. And I believe Jen talked about this a little bit last month in our session here, but picking up most of us operate in some sort of a hybrid mode. So even those who are doing Agile aren't pure Agile using Scrum methodology or a different Agile type methodology. They're operating in a hybrid type mode. So how do we determine what types of projects go one way or the other? So those were the 2 that stood out most. We also had another group of about 4 that showed up in anywhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of the responses, having to do with when we are in those hybrid type modes, how do we reflect an Agile project on a waterfall Gantt chart sort of reporting structure across all projects? How do we measure success? How do we go through and keep our backlog sort of clean, maintained for what we're looking at from our projects? And then, of course, we get to the end of a sprint. How do we run a retrospective and looking into those? So those are the topics that came up. The group also, as part of the same survey, said, how often would you like to talk about these? And we had about half said monthly, with another 1/4 said every couple weeks, and another 1/8 said every 2 months. So it seems like that monthly is pretty close to a sweet spot for what we're doing. So what we're looking at next, coming off of here then, is to be able to, why does my screen keep moving? What we're looking for next to come off of here is to be able to look and see if we can have someone who's willing to take on and maybe schedule and coordinate a series of webinars, and they would even live outside of our monthly. So you say, hey, we're going to put together an Agile series, and for members, folks who are members of other groups like ITSM, they've done this in the past. We've done it not in the last few years within the PMCG, but previously we've also done it where we'll set up a little track of topics related to a specific subject and can run that outside of the constraints of our monthly webinars too. So to offer up additional features there. So we will be looking to identify a coordinator for that, asking folks that have jumped in from the start will get first crack at being able to participate there. So I've already mentioned thanks to Patrick from University of Wisconsin for doing the survey. We've also had Bhavna from Miami University who really initiated the topic. So she sent out the request for the group and coordinated that first topic webinar on it. I think it was on a Thursday or Friday afternoon, which did it. And Jen Birch from our group, from our steering committee, who led the topic last month here within our webinar. Questions on Agile? I know I talk fast. And if you're interested or have more details on a topic and have some Agile experience in here, and we are always looking for folks to share, or if you have leads on someone to share. Jennifer, I see a hand raised. Go ahead, you can unmute.
Hi, yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. Just wondering about, while we're on the topic of Agile, about the financing of capital projects versus operational costs in a budget where those of you may use capitalized project implementation expenses, really struggling with how to do that with Agile projects where you may have pieces of it going live, which aren't really allowed, right? You can't really capitalize those. So been really struggling with that. Don't know if that's a relevant topic or if anyone else has experienced that, but would love to share some knowledge and experience in that arena.
Let us, if you could make that note, because we can pick that up, and that's a perfect question to ask, and we can get into it during the open part of the discussion. And if we don't have feedback for you here, we can take that forward and use that for the Agile folks to see as well.
Great, thank you.
Sure. And I am struggling because all of a sudden I realized my pencil is not on my desk and I don't know what I did. So I can't write it down in my notes. So thank you. Okay. Normally we do this at the very end, but based on the timeliness of what we're talking about here, I actually wanted to include this in the middle, which is we just talked about Agile and looking for speakers there. We also have a couple other topics that we're looking to put together. And as much as you probably love to hear me talk, sarcasm, and hear folks from the steering committee talking, we're a group of 1,800 strong, and we don't even have to be limited to the group. So we're looking for volunteers, we're looking for speakers to come in and help share your knowledge. You get credit, it'll show up on your Educause profile because we add it to the library afterwards. So you can use it on your reviews, use it on your resume, use it for PDUs, for your PMI renewals, et cetera. So we always love guest speakers. And some of the topics that we're looking at that came out of our needs from last year, we're talking about project status reporting, transitioning to operations. So, I would love that topic as somebody who's been on the same project or series of projects over 10 to 12 years because they won't let me out. So how do I hand it off? Governance and intake from an idea through approval and getting things into project queues. And we've talked a little bit about that, but that's a continued topic there. And how do we measure project success? So getting into real world key performance indicators on there. So those are some of the topics that we're looking to put together as we go from summer into the fall for the rest of the year for the PMCG. So if you have leads, please share them with us. If you're willing to volunteer, please share it with us as well. We are working on partnering with ITSM, and we can mark your calendar for Community Day. Please, if you have not already signed up, we encourage you to sign up. So it's on May the 4th, and it runs from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time or 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time. And I will not translate for Mountain and Central, but it will fall in between those hours. So registration is real quick. It's open. You don't have to be there and commit to the full 4 hours. There's a series of topics that the group is putting on. The PM community group will have a topic in there, as well as how our projects relate to service management. We are very tightly integrated with the two groups. So it's definitely beneficial. And one of the things we'll be talking about is, are we going to have a May PMCG meeting? Because we really want to encourage folks to attend this and don't want to take away bandwidth or people's ability to be in multiple places, even though they're completely different days. If you only have 1 or 2 hours to spend on the month on the topics, we want you to go to Community Day. We want it to be a success, and we want to learn from each other there. So we may not be having a May meeting, which you'll see at the end. One more point of note, I sent an email out to the community group last week noting that Educause has updated their community group participation guidelines. So they do periodic reviews. So what came out of this review and changes, just to highlight, are understanding. We have a listserv. We talk about a lot of topics across the listserv and even in these webinars as well. And with that, things like products come across, what tools we're using, how we're approaching things. And you might even see, people will say, hey, we're looking at to do a procurement for X and asking if people have done it and sharing documents. We recognize that we are an open group. We do have folks who are outside of higher ed who may be vendors involved with the group too. And we do not use the group for solicitation of business. So it's just making sure folks are mindful of the proper use of the group. We have, knock on wood, been very lucky, very fortunate. We have not, in my tenure here, my tenure as a member of the group, which is probably more than 12 years, I can't think of a single instance where we've had an issue with the group, and that's a testament to the civility of the project managers and the members of the group here too. So keep it up is what I say from our end. We do have updated language, like I said, mentioning the conflicts of interest. It reiterates Educause's commitment to the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And it details Educause's ability to respond should there be an improper posting. So we keep things civil. We can disagree with an approach, but we don't get personal across the group. And I have, like I said, in my time, I have never seen it happen, and we want to make sure that we keep it that way. There's a link to the new guidelines posted in the presentation, and we'll pull that and share that as well. And you can see the different topic areas there if you're interested in going through the page. All right, so that was far too long talking about logistics stuff without having any specific interaction with the group. So I am going to turn it over to Ed and turn it over to Carol, who will lead us now in our chance to flip the model, open the mics, and let folks ask questions and pick a topic of something you want to talk about, or question you may have. And it's an ask us anything. And it's meant for the whole group to respond, not just ask the PMCG leaders type of thing. So at the end of the day, we're project managers just like everybody else. So we have no special knowledge. We're just open and sharing, and we encourage everyone else to be the same. So Ed and Carol, I hand it over to you.
Sure thing. Thanks, John. So Carol and I will facilitate this portion of the discussion. And this is, again, as John said, this is open mic. So you have two choices. Just like most open mics, you can choose to sing a song, or a better option would be to ask a question to the group steering committee on any topic related to project management or related around that area. So with that in mind, rules of questioning is very simple. Either use the chat or raise your hand if you prefer to ask your question over the mic, and we'll keep an eye on both the participant panel as well as the chat panel. I do know we had a question, I think it was from Jennifer, about the financing and how that intersects with Agile Project Management. So Jennifer, and I'm paraphrasing your question, so if you could mic on and ask your question again, and let's see if anyone else wants to help address it. We can have our coffee talk session starting with your question.
Great, thank you. Right, the question pertains to when we work on projects, new works, we generally capitalize portions of that project. There's certain portions that can be capitalized. So our finance and budget office asks us to do that whenever possible. So the general auditing rules, though, once the work is used in production, it can no longer be capitalized and it has to move to our operating budget. So we've done this it's fairly straightforward when you're working on something, a typical waterfall type of implementation. You can project manage you can capitalize the salaries of the project manager, of people that are working on it, the software. There's certain things you can't, such as training costs and data cleanup, but there's some pretty distinct rules. We're really struggling, however, with agile projects whereby we may originally planned to capitalize something like AWS if we're doing a data lake project, but now it's a component-based cycle, right? It's more of an agile sort of capabilities implementation. So we may go live with a little piece of it as we continue working on another. So it's a rolling implementation, and there's no real clear lines of delineation for auditing purposes. So I'm just curious if we're an outlier in the way that we do this, or if anyone else has any experience with this.
So I'll throw that out there to the floor. Anyone out there have experience with managing agile projects and how you work around with the capitalization on the financial side?
So I'm curious, it sounds like there's no takers. Does anyone else even do capitalization of implementation for new work? Or just curious if that even is a thing for some of you.
Our university, in a broad sense, UH Clear Lake, I'm not sure we do the CapEx or capitalization or distinguish between that and operations. If we do, it's against the entire budget. So when we take on projects, it's funded from other business units in theory. I mean, everything I say is in theory. There's always exceptions to how things work. So chances are we don't take them on unless that department has the funding for it. And then what they do with that on their end, we really don't know how they classify it. And moreover, the underlying thing is we're not really true agile either. We say we're hybrid. We don't throw a lot of waterfall plans out there, but we also don't work off of Kanban charts or anything like that.
And just to add to that, what we would do is capitalization at the end of the project. So, and I commend you though for staying on top of your tracking so closely. That's amazing. Wish we could do that.
Well, thank you. You know, it's part of our project intake process. Before we accept a project, all the funding needs to be identified, and it's split up between sort of implementation, i.e. capital versus operations. So that has to go to governance for it to even be approved. So it's sort of baked into the process.
Yeah, when I used to work oil and gas for a very short stint, and there was hypersensitivity, very high fidelity, that's the better word, on separating CapEx versus OpEx monies through your project. I don't see that at UH Clear Lake.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I didn't want to leave you hanging on that question. I just didn't have too much to say on that, but I'll kind of echo what I think I'm hearing some others say, is that we don't, as a standard, separate CapEx and OpEx for most of our projects. For our very large ones, we do, because we do have some reporting to the state that we need to get approval through the state first for anything over a certain number of dollars. $250,000 needs to have that specified out. So as a standard process on our intake, we don't do that except for our very, very large projects, if that makes sense.
Yes, and to be clear, just because I don't see it or we don't see it, our project office doesn't see it, doesn't mean it's not happening. It's not visible to us from where we sit in our IT PMO.
And Ed, we do have a question in the chat related to costs, specifically actual expenses or labor. That's something that I know we don't do at the CSU. We don't capture resource expenses. It's the licensing costs that we capture. But what is everyone else doing?
I'll speak to this briefly just from our perspective at Kansas State University, is that on the intake side of things, I'll call it a swag, but it's somewhat better than a swag, but we do more of a basic model of direct and indirect costs. And those indirect costs are normally captured our labor costs, whether it be internal IT or functional costs. So we do make an attempt to establish those. We don't get down to the detail. We use some assumptions based on labor rates and things like that. And also we do kind of t-shirt sizes for the teams that are going to be involved. And some of those, admittedly, some of those areas, especially functional areas, may not have a really great idea of how much time something will take from them, but we do have a team that is trying to work with them in order to tease some of that information out. So when it goes in front of our governance committees, they have a better sense of what those indirect and also those direct costs, the labor, the hardware, things like, excuse me, the licensing and the hardware and things like that are easier to categorize, where the indirect is we're kind of maturing in that realm as well.
I think we're in that same boat. When we look at cost, we're looking at the licensing, but we're not really factoring in labor costs.
Right, we had, and where we are at Mason, it's interesting because one of the templates I just uploaded earlier today, I'll keep my plug for the templates, is we put together a cost estimation template, which was really the first time that we even attempt to estimate labor for internal resources, let alone tracking that on the back end. So kind of building on Dave's question is, I'm curious to see how people are even tracking their resource time. So it's sure we can go to, I can go to budget and finance and get numbers for software licensing and maintenance contracts or consulting engagements, any of that where we're actually writing a check. But I'm really curious as to how people are, how and if anyone is tracking an actual labor to be able to go back and say, sure, our estimates were close or they weren't, to be able to get to what Jennifer was talking about, which is the actual capitalization. So are people tracking time or tracking labor? And if so, how?
Yeah, and John, what I'd like to do is, and I've noticed this when I put things to YouTube, that the chat's not being captured. So if I'm going to go through this chat, and Carol and I can take turns if we need to on this one, to pull these chat statements into the recording. So let's attempt to do this. So I think John's already said in chat, he's echoed it on the mic, that he'd love to learn more about this, and that we struggle to capture the project cost, whether actual expenses or labor, but we have never really added up the cost of an implementation. And then let's see here, go quickly because it's moving up the screen. We're still maturing, but we do have capital budgets versus licensing and maintenance budget for initial project and implementation versus ops and services. And that's from Kevin Smith. And we've got Dave agreeing with that we're going to be moving to providing a cost projection, including labor. We've never done this before. I'd love to learn more about this too. And personally, I'll echo that as well for UH Clear Lake. We'd love to learn more about that. Kevin Smith is back and he says our licensing and maintenance budget is subscriptions and licenses centric to, that's TOO2, not really resource cost at this point, just starting to gather solid data on resource management, not really tracking in any detailed manner, just manager estimates. There you go. And then Nina Fox says, not tracking in detail, just estimates also. It seems to be a common thread among what I'm seeing in chat. And then Catherine Butler is saying, we just do high-level estimates on project plan, but we don't go back to change to actual time. And so that brings back, John circles us back to John's adding on to the question, which is any other thoughts as to how people are tracking? I guess we're focusing on the labor, how we factor that in.
And Ed, we have a couple of raised hands.
Oh, cool. Thank you for pointing that out too. So this gets busy.
Yes.
I'll take it from the top from my panel, just to be fair. So it'll say Michael, first one is Michael Rodemer from Wheaton College.
So I typically deal more with infrastructure projects, so it's a little bit easier, but we track every bit of labor, whether it's contractor, whether it's our own internal departments, from pulling cable to putting in light switches to putting in electrical power. Internally, I track the labor in terms of hours, and the only way to actually get it back into is you have to have a means for billing. If you want to actually have it show up in your capital budget as a capital expenditure, you have to bill yourself. And we have oftentimes had problems. People are like, yeah, but if I bill myself, then that lowers the amount of money I have to spend on stuff. And we're like, yeah, that's how it works. Yes. So there's been a hesitancy to bill ourselves just because we want to spend the money on more technology. But the way we've done it on other projects, and we're probably doing it this summer for a lot of classrooms that we're renovating, is we are going to be billing ourselves for our own labor into a project account.
Thanks, Michael. And then the next hand is from Dave Hoffman.
Yeah, hi folks. So we have done some time tracking in the past, and I have to tell you that you know, there's a lot of pushback from staff. Why are you micromanaging us? Why are you making us do this? Put in our actual time. We were having some real success after about a year and a half of people doing that and starting to get some good value and good estimates out of that. And then we had a big leadership change here at Colorado State University, and it wasn't focused, and everybody just quit doing it. So, you know, it's something that I think needs to be a cultural kind of change in our organizations if we are going to be able to do it. And if we want to track time, I like the idea of getting some good estimates, but, you know, that whole then second layer question of how do you validate if your estimates are really, you know, accurate or not. Without some actual time tracking. So we just got approval for a project to start a project management office that I wrote the business plan for. And John, I will update the template for our business plan for the PMO. I will do that here. And as part of that, we are going to be starting to implement some of these things. So I can let you know how things work here and what we learn. And if, you know, other people are doing some things, I'd just love to collaborate with you on that too.
Dave, that'll be a great template. I have a lot of interest in that as well. And I bet you submit that. I mean, that $25 Amazon is as good as yours, I bet.
There, we'll see. Yeah, it was an interesting process to create a business plan for the PMO and then, you know, run it through the whole cycle of approvals, Adam. So yeah, I appreciate it. I know we talked earlier, so I appreciate some of your input on that too. So.
And I did get to see a preview copy of it. That's why I highly encourage it, you know, to be able to, you know, get it redacted enough to be able to share data, because it is a great way to look at what we do in the PMOs and demonstrate the value and how you measure that value. So it's when we talk about templates, those are the types of things too that can be very helpful to folks. So I know it's a sidetrack. So thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
You bet.
So yeah, I thought I had somebody off there. So Jennifer Smith then just reiterates that this ties back into our #1 request here, which is project estimation. To see things a little further down this path, I was going to say, has anyone had success? Because I hear this a lot with the, you know, we're going to do time tracking, but it's just not that successful because people feel burdened by it. I know a long time ago when I was on the instructional design team, we had a time tracking system and it did not take well. So does anyone work on saying, just on the estimates, saying, well, I think we're going to devote about, I'll make some numbers up here, about 20% of this individual contributor's time from this IT team. And then because it's a percentage, you just take the value of that person's salary at 20%. And that's the estimation for the labor. And you do that consistently across all projects, ending that with a question mark.
It doesn't look like we have any raised hands. We don't have any takers on that one, Ed. But you know, I have a follow-on question, if I may. Does anyone do estimates for the purpose of chargebacks for your PMO? And that's something that we had talked about years and years ago, and it just it never got traction.
This is Dave again, and I'll jump in both on Ed's and on Carol's. So Ed, your question, I think that's how we're going to start. Is we're going to provide some training to folks on on estimating techniques and how to better do estimating. We'll be providing that training. Most of the time when I ask people in IT, they're like, it doesn't matter what I tell you, it's going to be wrong. And so they don't want to tell me anything. And we're kind of those ones and zeros people where it's either right or it's wrong. So we're going to be doing some training there and helping out with that. But I think that's what we'll do is we'll get that percentage, kind of get a base labor estimate, you know, kind of do that through things as we start and then kind of move forward on some of those. Carol, I was going to respond to your question, but now I just lost what it was.
Oh, does anyone do chargebacks?
Oh, yes. And so we are planning on doing chargeback, and we are starting we actually have our first project on campus that'll be part of our PMO, where we're charging back for our project management services. We're just starting to develop that model. So I don't have anything good and in place where we've just put in a little time tracking. I have an hourly person who is tracking their time against a labor code that we're going to bill back on. That's all we're really doing right now.
Yeah, so go ahead, John.
Okay, I was just I just shared a document in the chat and it's one of the ones I uploaded. We are starting our project estimation here as well. And one of the things that we did was, to your point, Ed, is we looked and said, we could manage down to an individual salary level if we wanted to, but it's not really practical to do that. So we just came up, and I think it was like what Adam said, where we have a base rate that we use for everybody. Some people may be less, some people may be more, but it'll get us close enough into the ballpark to be able to do what we need to do. So in the document I shared, if folks have the ability to download it and see it, what we did was we again, like Adam talked about t-shirt size, and we have a small, a medium, and a large estimate across, I think, 15 different sort of labor role category types of things, like project management, analysis, development, testing, just different roles that you would see across a project. And then labor estimates that are founded in, oh, this is, one person, 20% for 6 months. So, it may be this many hours, but then you can also overwrite it to what you want. Cause you'll see, your choices may be 80 hours, 480 hours, or 2000 hours. That's a very, very disparate view, but at least was trying to give folks these ballpark ideas to get through. So we started doing that last summer. We've done it maybe on 25 or 30 of our more recent projects that we've started doing those, but we don't have any tracking on the back end. One thing that we did try to do to run a pilot to see about appetite for time tracking, we actually did built a Qualtrics based timesheet sort of thing, where we said, here's a list of projects and a list of weeks. And you just went in and you filled out your name, and then you chose the project and how many hours you worked that week on that project. So our attempt was to make it so rudimentary that nobody would ever even consider it being a time reporting system, which is one of the beefs that folks have, is how dare you track my time? This is why I came to higher ed. I'm not in private industry anymore. I don't want you micromanaging me. So we tried that just to see the appetite, but that sort of fell by the wayside based on resource and leadership changes and things on there. And we were never able to take it to the next step. But it was at least providing a baseline for people to say, oh, okay, I think I may work more on stuff. I may not be working on stuff as much as I'm thinking I'm working on it. Or boy, oh boy, the fact that we had 6 meetings last week, that those 20 people in a 1-hour meeting, it's 20 hours of work. Do we really get 20 hours of actual work out of there? And do they all need to be there? So you start to see those sorts of things. But that's as far as we've gotten on anything. And Carol, to your question, we can't get chargebacks for the things that we should be getting chargebacks for to get that sort of a model. But the appetite is changing internally. So it wouldn't surprise me in the next 3 to 5 years if we're looking to do exactly what you described, which is you will pay for our consulting services from a project management office, or tying a dollar amount to our services, so people don't realize they can just plug into project management or plug into IT and we're free. We're just sitting there waiting to do what comes across our desk immediately, versus understanding the opportunity costs of the organizations and the projects in which we work.
And to that, the project estimation tool that you put up there, to add to that, there is a question from Jennifer to Dave asking if Dave would be willing to share his training on the project estimation. I was going to ask the same question too.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. And John, to your point, as we've started to do a chargeback model as well, I've had to first of all develop a proposal template on, hey, here's how we're going to propose, providing project management services to you, as well as a template for a memorandum of understanding that we're requiring those people sign with us on, hey, you provide this, sponsorship, leadership, helping to recruit resources for your area. We'll provide these types of things before we get that, agreement all in place. So I can also provide those templates.
And there's one more post in here. And remember, it kind of helps to have your university name associated next to your name, because that way, if we know your university's fight song, then Adam will sing it. Just kidding. So Nina Fox says we do generalized estimation and tracking using Jira's Tempo, I think. Tempo, yeah. And John's just reminding that he just shared his estimation tool, which you could download. I've already downloaded it to my desktop, so I can look at that. Any other questions? There they go. See, it's so much easier when you can say John Prette from George Mason. Just rolls off the tongue that way.
I had a question. I'm Sheba here.
Hey, Sheba, go ahead.
So it was actually for Jen. I'm not sure if she's here. I'm interested in earning a PMI ACP certification. I know Jen has done. I'm not sure if any of you have done. I needed some tips. How did you prepare for it? Did you follow any particular book? So if you can guide me, help me out here, that'll be great.
Well, unfortunately, Jen is not on the call this morning, but does anyone else have an ACP on the call? I think we're going to have to send Jen your way, Sheba.
All right, thank you.
Along those lines, I'll ask a question. Are there any PFMPs out there, Portfolio Management Professional Certified folks? Okay.
And I have a question I want to throw out there, Ed. Recently, well, I guess since January, Educause has supported the mentoring program and mentoring circles. Is anyone participating in that? And either the one-to-one mentoring or the mentoring circle?
So I did register, but I didn't get the time to go for it. So that's the situation.
Well, I'm going to drop it in the chat. I didn't have success with the one-to-one mentoring. I did reach out to a couple people who didn't respond to me, so I wasn't personally hurt, but I felt like, you really have to have the time to participate in this. But I am enjoying the mentoring circles. There's a couple topics out there that it's just small group discussions. And they're just focused. They last for up to 3 months. And then, once that 3 months is over, you move on to another circle or not. But it really is a nice program. If you haven't looked into it and you have some time, I really suggest you look at their website. It's very nice.
That's a good find, Carol. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Jennifer's hand pop up and go back down. Jennifer, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just, I wanted to just mention, I had had a conversation about the mentoring program and was interested in becoming a mentor. And then I feel like it fell off the plate somehow. Carol, are you referring to the one-on-one mentoring, whereas you sign up to be a mentor and you're put in a database?
Yes.
And, okay. That's what I was sort of halfway signed up to do. So I appreciate your feedback on that. Maybe I'll try the small group as well.
Yeah, the platform is actually very nice. I like that kind of techie stuff. And the circles are good too. If you just want to put in a short time commitment, it's nice. Any other questions for the group?
I will ask my deep question, and we'll have about 3 minutes if anybody has responses to it, which is, we right now are doing a lot of work on our intake process and have a bit of a struggle on determining what is a project versus what's a service request, and being able to get those differentiated, regardless of the fact that we actually have a definition of a project that's pretty solid. I think there's still a little bit of a struggle of folks wanting to admit something's a project when it is. So I'm curious if anybody has any tips, tricks, advice on what's a service, how you differentiate between a project and what we would consider a service request or an operational request type of thing.
We've had some experience in this, John, but I was going to wait to see if anyone else wanted to step up to the coffee table.
I'll jump in here and say we have that same problem, John, in a lot of areas at Colorado State. With each of our individual teams within our IT world, I try to meet with each of those leaders at least once a month and review their projects, not the ones that are inside the PMO. And then I generally am able to have that conversation with them of, that's not an operational thing, that's really a project. And so that's the only way, and then over time they start to get a better idea and learn that, oh, that's a project, but we have a good definition too, and it's still a challenge.
Jennifer has her hand up.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, we work with our service desk, so we try to be customer centric and not throw them around to one process versus the other. So we have a rather complex manual internal workflow to make sure that from the very start, from the intake, if it does come in as a ticket, there's an internal process whereby we can fairly seamlessly transition it to a project or back again. It's not perfect and things do fall through the cracks, but we're hoping with an integrated ITSM like Team Dynamics that we'll be able to more seamlessly make that experience, whether it's a ticket or project, not so cumbersome and full of friction for the end user.
Jennifer, are you building towards that now in Team Dynamics, or are you using Team Dynamics already to do that? I ask only because we are a TDX shop also.
Oh, well, I would love to hear it. We're building towards that. We're actually starting a demo. We've toyed with it for years and years, and we have two disparate systems, and that's what causes the need for this manual process in between, this interstitial process. But I'd love to speak with you a little. I always get so much value out of our conversations about Team Dynamics as we start into our journey.
I'll take it down to bring it up offline.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And Jennifer and John, UH Clear Lake is about to put the project office and our application inventory into Team Dynamics. We're not doing the ITSM side yet, and there's reasons for that. But I'd definitely like to be included in that offline discussion as well, if I may.
Sounds good. We're an ITSM TDX Team Dynamics shop. We haven't done project and portfolio or portfolio and project. So that's where I'm trying to get to be able to get to those integrations. Regardless, being tool agnostic, I believe, I believe it's beneficial from an organizational perspective. When you have folks that do operations and projects together, that we don't have a project team and an operations team. Everybody does everything. So having an infrastructure that supports being able to have people see their work and manage their work in a single location, to be able to say someone's assigned to these 10 operational incidents or tickets, these 5 service requests, and these 3 projects can be very helpful from a leadership and a resource planning perspective. And so we can see where people are and what they're doing. So that's my wish list from a longer term. But I've been wishing for it for years. And what is it? It's a great project management answer to that, which is, is it a dream without a plan is just a wish? or something along that, where I need to get to the plan as a project manager to bring it to fruition.
Yeah, and I guess since we paused on toolset real quick, I'll just mention that similar to what we're all saying, the most successful I've seen this kind of stood up was using Team Dynamics as a tool for ITSM and PPM. And there are some intentional decisions to not have any general IT requests, because that was kind of an open door for folks to submit projects through there and go around the governance and review process. So we closed down general IT requests and had specific services stood up for everything, and everything else had to funnel through a ticket, which was a project request ticket. And then what our informal PMO would do would be a tiny little bit of triage to understand, is this a service, or is this a small project or a large project, and make that determination. So we ended up setting up a funnel, which over time became pretty successful in creating what you were talking about, John, to have a good understanding of who's working on what services, who's working on what projects, because there is standardization across the organization.
And that was the PowerPoint on my desktop that I closed right before I set up for this meeting. So, okay. Ed, Carol, thanks, Adam. Ed and Carol, I'm going to take it back over just so we can wrap up, since we're about 3 minutes before the hour, if that's okay. Thank you both for facilitating the discussion. Thank you, everybody, for the discussion part of it. As I get back over here, just to remind you, if we do have critical mass for a May meeting, we will be on Tuesday, May 18th at 2 p.m. We will be making a determination in the next few days. So if you want us to have a meeting in May, put it in the chat, give a thumbs up and say, we'd like to do something, whether it's something more informal like these types of coffee talks, where we can bring up whatever topics we want and share, or if it ends up being something a little bit more formalized. But we do, like I said, encourage you to attend the ITSM session on May 4th. We'll be back in June, then we take our summer break. We're back for August, September, and then there will be a conference this year. They're working out the details. Call for proposals is going on right now. I think they may have been due last week. I forget the date, but we will hopefully be able to have a good conference this year and get back into the swing of things. And then we'll be back in November, December, topics to be determined throughout the fall. So resources, as always, when it's up and available, we have the PMCG wiki site that Ed has been working diligently on and bringing from the 1990s up to now. And we will be going from there into the other Educause resources, such as the community groups, job listings, etc. Please feel free to use them. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to try to make sure I'm done before the clock strikes 2, especially as I'm not the official owner of the meeting. So thank you. Thank you again for all the participation. Have a wonderful day. And we will see you hopefully in early May at the ITSM Community Day.
Thanks all.